Hello, friends, and welcome back to another episode of Barriers and Boundaries Resilience Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, EB, and I'm super excited for our guest today, Adrienne Benton, fantastic speaker, motivational speaker. Today, we're going to talk about healthy employees, creating healthy organizations, particularly in the role that faith has with our concepts of resilience. Even if you're a leader that's not a faith-based or faith-oriented, I think it's important to understand how faith can be a motivating factor for someone, how it can help them be resilient, how it can help them overcome adversity, at home or in the workplace. So please keep listening, check it out. I think this is going to be really good, some really good insights for you. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to shoot me an email. But all the links and stuff for Adrienne will be provided as well, because I know you're going to want to hear more from her and about her. Let's get into it. Hello, friends, and welcome back to another episode of Barriers and Boundaries Resilient Leadership. I am excited. I am more than excited. I'm overwhelmed with joy because Adrienne is on the show today, and she is super dynamic. I've known her for, goodness, almost 10 years now. I think it's been
Yes.
about 10 years now. And one of the things I hate is having to speak after her because she is so dynamic, just a wonderful, motivating presence. Adrienne, thank you so much for being here today. I really, really appreciate you and just what you have to bring to the table. And I just want to just kind of start off, just turn it over to you and just, let folks get to know you. So
Yeah.
who is Adrienne?
Oh, I love that question. First of all, it is wonderful to be able to join you here on this platform. Thanks so much for allowing me to come here as a guest. Adrienne Benton, I'm an international speaker, trainer, facilitator of resilience workshops, life coach, and I have the opportunity every day to live my life doing non-traditional ministry, and I absolutely love it.
I think you forgot an amazing manager of efficiency and time to do all of that. You stay pretty busy. Your schedule stays pretty full.
Living life on purpose. Yes.
So one of the things about Adrienne is she has a book, a journal,
Yeah.
Greater Force Than Failure,
Yeah.
Intentional Time with God. And it's a great book. There are a lot of great words, one being intentional right there on the cover. We talk about, obviously in this podcast, we talk about resilience. And one of those aspects of being resilient is how do you address failure? And, we can talk about processes and organizations, we can talk about communities and, but one of those big aspects of dealing with life and bouncing back from adversity is how do you handle failure? So I just wanted to just kind of hear from you, kind of hear some thoughts, uh, you know, things that you kind of wrote about in the book. One of my I liked was the responsibility piece, the role of
Mhm.
responsibility in your own
Yeah.
life. So can you just share more, about that?
Absolutely. So you are correct. The journal is called A Greater Force Than Failure, Intentional Time with God. And it really hones in on, first of all, from your perspective, as you look at your life journey, have you ever failed? Have you ever made a
Mm.
mistake? I would dare say every single one of us would raise our hand and be able to say yes. Why? Because no one is perfect, right? Have you ever found yourself in a place where you gave your best effort and yet you still missed the mark? I mean, I personally can think of, let's just go with work, times where I put time and effort into it, and yet the end result did not meet the expectation either of myself
Mm,
or of though my supervisor. And that feeling of it's like somebody burst the balloon, or the
mm,
feeling of did I let somebody else down? Not wanting to disappoint, right? Or wanting to put your best foot forward. And so it capitalizes also on resilience. What
mm.
do we do when we find ourselves in those situations or circumstances where we have quote unquote failed, right? What is failure? And then where does faith come in? What do we lean on? What do we depend on? What is that foundation that we are able to stand on when we find ourselves in these crisis moments?
Mm. Have you found, so being barriers and boundaries, have you encountered, if you had people reach out to you that talk about how faith is, you know, sometimes a barrier for folks? Maybe they've been hurt by a church community or they feel distant from God. Have you seen the balance between how faith is a boundary, a healthy boundary for folks to kind of reside in versus it's a barrier for some?
Absolutely. So, one of the things that I invite people to do is, first of all, identify what is your definition of faith.
Mm,
If your definition of faith is religion, if your definition of faith is going to church every weekend, if your definition of faith is something that is more on this is what I have to do, then it's going to be problematic. It's going to be really hard to rest on that because it's so conditional. But if your
mm.
definition of faith is, for example, they say, I love acronyms, right? One of the acronyms for faith is forwarding all issues to heaven. So,
Mm,
from a faith perspective, I believe in God, right? And so,
mm.
when I think about faith,
Can you
right
repeat that
before
one
I
more time
even
for
think
us?
about the resolution,
Yeah.
I'm thinking about faith. I can forward all issues to heaven.
All
I
issues.
have my God who can handle this, who's big enough, who's wise enough. So I can, with peace in my heart and spirit, I don't have to have all the answers right now, but I
Mm,
can turn to the one who does.
mm. Is that part of your journey? Is that part of your story, your background?
That
Think-
is a part of my story. It's a part of my journey.
Mm,
My parent, I grew up pretty much in a faith household, in a
okay.
religious household, spiritual household.
Mm,
My parents became Christians when I was about 5 years old, so I went to church and all the children's services, and yet I found myself in a place in my late teens, actually my early 20s, where I was just like, I'm not doing this God thing. For some reason there was just a disconnect, and one
mm,
day I decided that I was no longer going to engage with God, talk to God. I was just done. And so I
mm,
told him, I'm not talking to you anymore. But what was
mm,
so crazy was I was still going to church. I was still involved in a lot of women ministry kinds of events and things. And so on this
mm,
day that I told God, I'm not talking to you anymore, that evening had to go to a women's ministry meeting where we were planning for a conference that we were going to do. So I said, no big deal. Everybody knows me as this faith-filled person, so it would be really odd if I just totally walked away from everything. So I will still go and just do the logistical things that I need to do, but there's no heart connection. And so we're
mm,
at the meeting and we're planning everything. And the very last thing that we were going to do to conclude the evening was to do a prayer. And someone said, why don't we do a group prayer? Why don't we get in a circle and we're going to go around the circle and everybody's going to say a sentence prayer? And I'm like, oh my goodness, I just told God I'm not talking to him anymore. Why do I have to pray? But I said, wait a minute, I know what I'm going to do. I don't have to do like an actual heart prayer. I'm just going to quote a passage of scripture. May the Lord watch between me and thee while we're absent one from another. Amen. And so I positioned myself to be the last person to pray.
mm.
But as life would have it, they decided to start the prayer at the person next to me, right? So the person prayed and it came to me. I don't even remember what I said, but I started just saying something. And all of a sudden, one of the
Mm.
ladies, she's a dear friend of mine, one of the ladies said, "Ah," and she fell, like she fainted. And for
Oh.
some reason in my spirit, I said, oh no, she fainted because of me. I went against God. And I was like, Lord, I'm so sorry. And long story short, I began to ask God some questions. Like, who
Mm,
are you?
mm,
I've seen you do things for my parents and for others. But right now, in this phase of my life, I just don't see where you're here for me. But if you're real, which I know you are, if you want to be in relationship with me, then I want to start from the bare basics. I want to
mm,
kind of erase everything that I've known in the past, and I want to hear your voice, like the stories I read about in the Bible. I want to feel that heart impression. I just want to know that you're real. And then God began to take me on this journey.
Mm,
And what's so amazing, Eric, is when we walk with the Lord, we walk with God. It's faith-filled journey. It's you today I cannot rely off of yesterday's experiences
mm,
has to be an everyday engagement. They say that scientifically, when you wake up in the morning, whatever you engage in the first 20 minutes of your day sets the tone for your perspective. It sets the tone for how you're going to perceive life for the rest of your day. I
mm,
don't know about you, but when I first wake up, many times my mind starts rehearsing the difficulties, what I perceive, the to-do list what I remember that did not get accomplished yesterday. That's not how I want to start my day.
yeah.
That hinders me in my faith walk. So I want to start my day in gratitude. I start my day by just saying, I'm alive. How
Hmm.
do we use our failures to become resilient? Number one, and this is in the journal.
Yeah.
Remember that a failure or a mistake is an occurrence. It's a situation, it's a decision, it's a behavior, but it's never the person.
Mm.
Sometimes we have challenges in the workplace. It's because we take business and we take professional and we make it personal. Right? So as a leader, it's keeping
No,
your
never.
people on the task. Keeping your people on the task that this
Mm,
this decision that you made right here, maybe that
mm,
was not the right decision to make in this situation, right? Knowing
yeah,
your context, right?
yeah.
This occurrence that happens, yes, maybe as a team, we did not execute the way we wanted to, but this is not our identity. This
Hmm.
is not our identity. This is what has happened, right?
Yeah.
Number two, in the book, it says, see your mistakes or failures as feedback. That's why
Mm,
we do
mm,
assessments and evaluation forms, right? And
mhm,
sometimes we don't want, like we get nervous. Oh, I don't want people to really write down. But when our customers talk back to us, then that's really how we're able to gauge whether we're really meeting the mark or not. I could think I'm doing the most wonderful job ever leading, but it's the feedback that I get from my people that lets me know whether or not it's really successful or not.
mm,
And so it's really important that we allow ourselves the opportunity when failure happens, when a mistake happens, that we see it as feedback.
mm,
Maybe it's a course correction. Maybe I need to go in a different direction, right? Maybe I need
yeah.
to pay attention to detail a little bit more than I did before. And number three, in the journal, it reminds us that when a mistake happens or a failure happens, this is an opportunity for us to stay grounded. This is an opportunity for us to reflect,
Mm,
to make a plan, to dig deep so that we can take action and move forward. What enables me to fight, to wrestle through dark moments is my faith.
mm,
There's a passage of scripture that says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not unto your own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge him and he will direct your path. So, from my faith perspective, when I find myself in these challenging moments, when I find myself having made a mistake, I'm going to trust in God. I'm going to
mm,
seek him for wisdom. I'm going to give him permission. I'm going to surrender and ask him, God, redirect me. Give me the wisdom that right now I'm lacking.
mm.
And then I'm going to wait with peace.
Yeah, it
That's
seems like the difference that faith really brings to and allows someone to be resilient when there's a difference between I failed versus I am a failure,
mm-hmm.
right? And I could see how, you know,
Yes,
the guilt versus shame, like shame's like, oh, you're a failure. You're not who you thought you were. Uh,
yes,
yeah. And that's a big role for faith to kind of fill in that void where, something happens, someone fails a test, and all of a sudden that's how they see themselves.
yes,
Mm,
yeah. Um, we have to ask ourselves many times when that voice comes, we have to ask ourselves, stop, where is this voice coming from?
mm,
Is this what I've been taught? Is this what I picked up from society? Is this me being hard on myself? I have a couple of really good friends who are my accountability partners. As a matter of fact, I had one who told me yesterday, she asked me, so, how are you doing? And so I just started telling her like how I'm doing. And she was like, you're being really hard on yourself right now. Like,
mm.
stop. I was just like, oh, well, yeah, well, I guess I am. So it's really important that we that we stop and we have some times for quiet meditation,
Mm.
quiet reflection. We run,
Intentional.
run. Intentional time. Yes, I'm
Mm.
talking to myself, even though we're having this conversation. It's really important. How do we exercise resilient skills? It's really important that we build the ability to stay in touch with supportive community, supportive people, whatever support looks like for you. It's important that you stay in touch and you engage with that. It's
Mm.
important that we, in that self-awareness piece, that we take time to figure out, what does managing my everyday stress look like? What's the release valve for you? The positive release valve for you. For some people, it's working out, right?
Mm.
For some
Mhm.
people, it's stopping and just having that quiet time with some jazz music playing and a cup of tea, starting their morning off looking out the window and just being grateful, or whatever it looks like for you. It's important that you have a daily practice, a daily discipline, right?
Mm.
Not once a week, but
Mm.
every day. And the time limit is up to you. It could be 10 minutes. It could be an hour, right? I have one of my nephews, he works in corporate, but
Mm.
every day, between 12 and 1 o'clock, it doesn't matter. He will shut everything down. Doesn't matter who's trying to get into that time. He has a
Mhm.
suit on when he goes to work, dressed up, but he puts on those sneakers. Later on, he'll change around that time and he'll go and just go for a walk, go for a run in
Yeah.
whatever area he is, wherever he's working. That's his me time to just, and then he gets right back to work and gets right engaged in
Nice.
it. So it's really
Yeah.
important that we set up those disciplines. And then what motivates you outside of work?
Mm.
And that looks different.
Yeah. Yeah.
Talking to a senior leader the other day, and he said for him, outside of work, he just needs to go and get in his car and drive for a good drive, right? Whatever motivates you, that's what
Yeah.
you want to focus on as well.
Nice. And I
Yeah.
can see that, and I can see how there's that responsibility theme out the gate, like with the journal, and just how, like you said, like you're kind of responsible for certain actions, some of the basic things that you engage with. You said you want to kind of get back to the basics, and like there is your responsibility in that as well. So God has his part, you have your part, and you kind of see how that kind of works hand in hand. It's a good word. That's a good word. There was another acronym. So you talked about faith, forwarding all issues to heaven. There was an acronym for fear in the book. Could you discuss that for a little bit? I don't want to give too much of the journal away. I want people to check out the journal, of course, but could you talk about fear and how that relates to faith? And
Yeah, absolutely. So, when it comes to fear, many times we're afraid of things that are never going to happen. We're afraid of the maybe. We're afraid of the ifs.
mm,
There are very few times where we're actually afraid of the right now, right?
mm,
And there's quite a few acronyms for fear.
sure.
Uh, Several of them. One of them that I really love is face everything and rise.
Mm,
That one. Face everything and rise.
mm.
Mm, hmm. I often ask myself, what's the worst thing that can happen for this thing that I'm anxious about? And what would happen if I chose to face it and rise? Either rise because I made the choice to rise,
Mhm.
or face it and be patient and let the
Mm.
circumstance work itself out and rise above it. And that's where we go back to faith. If
Mm.
I am legitimately having faith and exercising that faith in the higher power and something that is greater than me, then my belief and my expectation will be that there is a resolution for this,
Mm.
that I will come through it, that I will overcome from
Yeah.
it.
Any misconceptions about faith that you hear often, or anything that comes up when you're like, well, that's not exactly faith, or I've heard differences between like religion and faith, kind of in the same ballpark, but uh, just kind of different in how they're expressed. Anything come to mind when you think about the different like misconceptions about faith? Uh, God's gonna handle everything. Yeah, that type of thing.
Yeah, I think a cousin to faith is trust.
Mm,
A cousin to faith is trust, right? And trust involves the juxtaposition of of your hopes and your aspirations with your deepest worries and your fears. And many times, an assumption is that if I need help, then I have to be able to resolve it on my own.
mm,
So I end up having faith in myself as opposed to faith that engages my fears with my hopes and allows there to be a balance.
mm.
If I'm trying to handle it on my own, I lose that balance.
Yeah.
It's
It
one
would it
way.
would it be accurate, to say you're allowing, like, faith isn't necessarily things just working out in your favor. It's just letting go of the result.
Yes.
Is that where? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And just trusting that what happens is meant to
Mm-hmm.
be, or okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because the other assumption is that, like you just mentioned, if I have faith, then I will instantly be relieved of my circumstance. No, no, that's not how faith works. Because in order for, like, how do I know that I have faith? Only when I'm in a situation where it has to be exercised.
Mm,
When will my faith ever grow? When I find myself in a position of difficulty where
mm,
it has to be exercised, where it has to come into fruition. Just having the concept of faith is different
mm,
than exercising it,
mm.
having to live through it.
Yeah.
Mm,
Mm. So
yeah,
when you wrote the journal, and I know you have a lot of speaking engagements, and so when you is journal important for you as well? Is that part of your habits? Is that part of your faith? And does that contribute to resilience for yourself? And
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah.
So I grew up journaling. When I, as a little girl, I used to love writing in a diary, right? I would put all
Okay.
my thoughts in there. And as I continued to grow older and really begin to go on this faith journey, I began to write in a journal because I wanted to be able to look back. I wanted to be able to see how far I've come. I wanted to be able to look and be able to say, I have a testimony, right? I
Mm,
went through this situation and man, I went through that last month. Woo, what? 30 days later. I don't know how that worked out, but it worked itself out. Or last year, this is where I was at last year. Oh my goodness. And to be able to
mm,
see the progress and to be able to see how far I've grown, I also use my journal sometimes to just have a conversation with God.
mm,
You know, sometimes there are some thoughts and things that you can't really share with anyone else. And then I find that as I start writing, I start releasing. And it's a way to be able to clear my mind, to bring myself back to center, and to also be able to see what's really important. Many times I'll sit and I'll write, and as I'm reading it, then I'm able to say, okay, I'm majoring in the minors here.
mm.
This really shouldn't be a priority, or I have not been paying attention to something that really should have been a priority, right? So,
Yeah.
yes, healing is definitely a part of that faith walk.
And so there's that connection. So there are habits that you have that support some of those priorities, such as faith, and
Yes.
that allows a resilient faith to take place, and then that actually in return creates a more resilient you. Is that
Yes.
kind of the projection there, the path there?
Absolutely. It
Yeah.
also gives us an opportunity to have self-awareness, right? You got to know
Mm,
yourself in order to grow yourself.
yeah.
Yay. I'm saying that, right? And
I
you got to know
love it.
yourself in order to
Yeah.
grow yourself. I share this with people all the time. Like when I meet you, you're already in a relationship with you. If you don't understand the relationship that you have with you, then the relationship that you have with anybody else, this world in general at large, will always be faulty. Why? Because everybody is interacting with you through your mask. I'm going to say that one more time. When I
Mm,
meet you, you're already in a relationship with you. If the relationship that you have with you has holes in it, doesn't make sense, right? Is problematic, then the
mm,
relationship that you have with everyone else will have faults and won't make sense, will be faulty. Why? Because everyone's interacting with you through your mask.
Mm,
And so it's really important in order for us to grow, in order for us to live a faith-filled life, in order for us to live life on purpose, in order for us to be men and women who walk forward with optimism, with joy, with
mm,
contentment, we have to know ourselves.
yeah.
No one can produce great things who is not thoroughly sincere in dealing with themselves.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of knowing yourself. I'm a big fan of that kind of like growth mindset. Like what are the opportunities we have from the adversity that we're facing, from the failures that we, talk about in the journal. How do you so let's I want to transition a little bit to like a workplace environment. How is this expressed? Like if you're a leader, if you're a manager, like you have staff that works for you, how is this expressed in your leadership style, so to speak?
That's fantastic. I love that, right? So
Mm,
I'm going to go back to what we said about awareness, right? Leadership is when you are situationally aware and you're able through that awareness to lead the people that you are seeking to meet the mission with.
mm,
People of faith never see a struggle as a failure. We see it as a step forward. And so, as you're leading, regardless of the circumstances, the challenges that come to the team, regardless of the different personalities that sometimes clash on your team, it's keeping that perspective that this challenge that we're dealing with right now, it is
mm,
a step towards moving forward. Right.
mm.
And it's keeping that perspective, that mantra of how do we overcome? How do we use this?
Sincerely, thank you so much for joining me today. I would like to direct people to learn more about you. So how can they do that? How can they find you? Go see her if she's anywhere near you when she speaks, because you will enjoy it. Uh, but yeah, how can folks get find more about you?
Fantastic. Thanks so much. So I
Mhm.
have a website, forwardmovementministries.org. You can go to the website. I have a Facebook page, Forward Movement Ministries. The way Facebook page there has a lot of resilience posts there that we try to invite and encourage people to stay positive every day. And when you go to the page, I will be speaking in Michigan soon at the end of
Oh,
October. So you
oh
can
wow.
definitely go and get more information about that. And then just stay engaged with the page. I'm also on Instagram,
Yeah.
FM Ministries as well. And so as you
Okay.
stay engaged with those sites, then you'll be able to stay updated with all the things that Forward Moving Ministries and Adrienne Benton are
There we
doing.
go. Oh, I love it. All right. I will post those links in the show notes as well. Please click on those, subscribe to those, stay up to date with Adrienne. Adrienne, thank you so much. I so much appreciate you and half for the last 10 years. And I knew 10 years ago when I met you, I was like, she's special. And you've proven that over and over and over, just with your sincerity and authenticity and just really good friendship for me and my family. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Uh,
Honored to be here with you in the community.
yeah. All right. All right, friends. Well, y'all stay up to date with Adrienne. And until next time, EB out here.